Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Clarkson, and I work at the School of Agriculture, Policy and Development at the University of Reading in the UK. I'm going to briefly talk about some initial results from the monitoring and evaluation of the PICSA approach in Ghana, Rwanda, Malawi, and Tanzania. During the PICSA approach, we use several different elements of monitoring and evaluation. This includes informal monitoring by the field staff who actually carry out PICSA, following the trainings they have with farmers, and support visits by PICSA expert trainers to support those field staff. What we call a planning and review process, where field staff gather following the initial rollout. So as Peter explained, field staff are trained well before the season, and then just before the season, those field staff are reconvened for a 1 or 2 day meeting where they're able to discuss progress through the rollout, any problems they may have had to try and solve those problems, and also to plan for the next steps, importantly including dissemination of the seasonal forecast and the types of messages that are coming out of that forecast for the farmers with whom they work. This is then followed by a more formal process of quantitative survey by independent enumerators, and also qualitative work to better understand the impacts and also the processes of change encouraged by the PICSA approach. So to give a bit of an example here, PICSA in the north of Ghana. So in 2015, we partnered with ADRA to train field staff from that NGO, and also government extension workers in 10 different districts in the north of Ghana. We trained around 30 to 35 field staff, and then they went to 140 communities across the 10 districts and reached more than 6,000 farmers in their different farmer groups, of which 40% of farmers were women. Similarly, in Rwanda in 2016, we trained 70 farmer promoters, so community volunteers from their Tuajiri Muhinzi program, who have since reached more than 2,500 farmers in 4 districts in Rwanda. So just to give some initial results, as you can see from the first bullet here, in the north of Ghana, almost all farmers had made changes in either their crops, their livestock or livelihood enterprises, or a mixture of those different enterprises. On average, farmers who'd been trained had made three different changes in any of those 3 different types of enterprises. In each of the countries we've worked, farmers have found the tools that Peter explained earlier very useful, and they've been using them in their planning and decision making for the agricultural season. This has then reflected. This means farmers are feeling better prepared to cope with the different challenges that they see from the PICSA approach. So part of the development of the different tools in PICSA, they're designed so that they're useful and usable, and so that farmers are able to share what is relatively complicated information, but is put into a format where farmers are quite capable of understanding and sharing with their fellow farmers. So in each of the countries we've worked, we've seen similar amounts. Around 80 to 90% of trained farmers say that they've been sharing with their fellow farmers, between around 6 and around 15 farmers on average. So just to give an example of some of the types of farmers and many different types of changes that farmers have been making. This slide just shows some examples of those. So things like changing variety of crops to potentially shorter maturing varieties, so different varieties or even new crops altogether. Thinking about small food processing business. So some farmers have decided to start storing food and selling it when the market price is better, and engaging in new and different livelihoods altogether. Some of the impacts that through the qualitative work we've done, farmers have been able to describe include the ability to pay school fees, the ability to invest. Farmers have reported that they've increased income, and that from that they have then invested that income in new enterprises, be that crop, be that livestock, be that different livelihood enterprises. And one of the things we found is that farmers are reporting that through improving in terms of yield, in terms of income, and the different options available to farmers, they've taken less time to work on other people's farms, giving them more time to work on their own farm, to think about diversifying, to think about trying new enterprises, and to make their livelihoods more resilient to the challenges that they face. So in conclusion, it's important, we feel it's important with the PICSA process to use several different elements of monitoring evaluation, through the more informal and the more formal, to understand the process by which climate services and PICSA in particular influences and drives change in smallholder systems. We found that farmers are reacting positively to the PICSA approach and are making changes in their practices as a result. Farmers have found that the different PICSA tools have been useful in their planning and decision making. And we're continuing to learn. Importantly, this last bullet, the approach we've taken with PICSA is very much an iterative approach. And we're continuing to learn and improve PICSA and develop it for new environments. So that's a lot of what we've done so far is concentrated in areas where crop farming is the most important enterprise for farmers, but looking at different ways that this information can be used in pastoral systems. We've also concentrated on areas where rainfall is the main limiting factor. And we're bringing in new areas and thinking more about how we can adapt PICSA to places where perhaps temperature might be the most important factor for farmers in their decision making. Okay, so.
All right, and now we have received many questions. I hand over to Simone to facilitate this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Grant, for the very interesting presentation. There are really a number of questions, and it will be quite hard for us to select some of those. But I would just start from one question which is available in the question box, which is, you've been using ICTs, I mean information technologies, trying to bridge the missing link, let's say, to reduce the climate change impacts on smallholder farming, fisheries, and forestries. Would you mind to elaborate more on that, especially on the challenges that you had while using ICTs as a tool to explain climate change to farmers, share climate change information with farmers?
Simone, in terms of the question around ICTs, what we've done with ICTs, the work in Ghana was mainly done through intermediaries. We've done a small proof of concept with looking at the use of ICTs to work with some of the data we're getting on historical climate, so start of season, the length of season, the amount of rainfall. And what we've found is that these ICTs can be extremely useful. They're not a panacea to look at, partly because not all farmers have access to them. So you still need that the intermediary there as well, and you need to be able to contextualize that information. So we found them as a useful starting point to start to bridge that gap, but not a panacea.
Yeah, Peter here, just to add to that. So most of the work done with PICSA has not been using ICTs. It's been extension workers or volunteers working with farmer groups without the use of ICTs. But we're beginning to experiment, as Graham said, with the use of tablets and mobile phones. But we don't ever see that, I'm afraid, replacing the face-to-face. It may support it and help, but it won't replace it.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your answer. I'll try to speak a bit louder because I know my voice is low and the mic apparently is low. One question I picked up from Simon Wachieni. I think it's interesting due to the variety of media and tools that you were using for sharing climate change information with farmers. Did cultural aspects had a bigger impact in your efforts to introduce PICSA to farmers?
I mean, the way that we look at PICSA when we start in a new area is to try to understand, okay, who actually reaches farmers, who works most closely with farmers. Is that extension or is that community volunteers? And so to some extent we rely on those people that work with farmers to have the knowledge as to how to adapt to different cultural aspects. So we talk to them and discuss that with them in farming. So understanding how different communities might use indigenous knowledge and how we're bringing new information to add to that and to sit alongside that. How different cultural aspects might impact on things like meeting times and how you actually reach different members of the community.